Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Justin White. I finally tracked down the most interesting man in the world, Rick Crawford. Not going to talk about the dirty things I had to do to get him on here, but you're welcome.
Bribery was involved.
So today we're just going to kind of go through the history, kind of what makes him do kind of the crazy things that he does. A little bit of, his mom's crazy street racing days.
And where I'm at with the LSA stuff at the moment and where I'm going.
And when he starts to do Gen 5.
Yeah, that's a really short story. That one ends right where it starts.
Stay tuned for that. So obviously this didn't start with LSA stuff because you were around way before that.
Yeah.
Where did this actually start?
So I'd bought the, I'd worked, doing hot rodding stuff. You were always poor. So I had a second job working at a shop, and I had a Buick, and I was racing and stuff and working at this shop trying to scrap together, pennies and dimes to go racing. And as years go on, I bought in December of 2008, I bought a Pontiac G8. I didn't even know it existed. My sister had me go looking at them. She didn't buy one, but I ended up buying one. Bought it in Wisconsin, drove it home, and that's when I started doing the hot rodding and tuning with LS stuff, and that progressed and progressed. And eventually the CTS-V came out. And when the CTS-V came out, I was still in the poor man's world. Although I was doing good with the NA stuff, it's a lot cheaper doing what you can with NA than it is with the blower stuff. But, I think Tim King was the first one that I worked with that had a Cadillac. I had done so good with the G8 stuff, NA, he goes, hey, you want to, work with me on doing a CTS-V? I was like, sure. And he wanted me to help him pick out a cam and, what he should do with injectors and tune it and stuff. And, when you look at HP tuners, it looks the same. It's just got boost. And I was like, I should be able to do it.
Close enough.
The transmission tables look the same. The engine stuff looked the same. I was like, okay, yeah, why not? So, and Tim King, Tim King is like full throttle. Like if it needs to be here, he'll FedEx it. And if there's more pulley, he'll put it on it. So with Tim King at the time,
he's still the same.
Yeah, right. So he had got most of his stuff together, and I tuned it. I think we got his car down somewhere in the mid 9s. But at the time, like 990 was like screaming. So when he went, I think 960s, everybody was like, "Oh, you're spraying, you're cheating, and all that stuff." And I was like,
when was this year-wise?
Oh my gosh, this had to be 2012 maybe.
So they were still
2013.
3 years old.
Yeah, 2013. They were still fairly new. Porting wasn't big. The big throttle bodies weren't out. This is back when you're porting throttle bodies. This is when you had to run a TPIS. Remember they used to do the TPIS 102s that wouldn't run for nothing. They idled terrible and they
worked wide open.
But they worked. They didn't shut down. We had problems. The Nick Williams would go into limp mode on you, and they wouldn't take a lot of boost. And of course he worked through that. But at the time, you had to get a TPIS and you had to salvage a LS2 throttle body. So I worked with Tim for maybe a year or two, and then I decided, I was like, man, I really want to get a two-door coupe because I've always wanted a two-door. Back when I growing up, two-doors were the cars to have. Yeah. Four-doors were like the grocery getters or the mom's car or something. So I really wanted a two-door. So I ended up buying, I think in 2016, 17, something like that, I bought my 14 CTS-V, and I got it from Chicago Motor Cars. And then I had already had a plan because, I worked with Tim. I was like, all right, I'm going to get a CNC blower from West Coast Cylinder Heads. I'm going to get some LS9 cylinder heads, and I'm going to do a little port work to them. I got some pulleys. I had ED5. I had this cool plan out ice tank. I had made my own 5-inch intake for it, and I was like, man, it's because, when I do somebody else's car, I look at what they did, and then I sit there and just go through it and hash it out and think, what could I do better? I was like, man, I can do the intake better. I can do better heads. I can do a little more aggressive cam, maybe more compression, something. And I had a plan together. I was going to do my race brakes like I did on my G8. And as time goes on, I'm working on customer stuff. Before I even got to build mine and go to the Cadillac attack, which I think was the first or second Cadillac attack, because we were all trash talking each other online, who's faster and who's cheating and who's not, same place, same time. That was still forum world, man. That was That's when it was good. That's when you didn't have to re-answer the same question 10,000 times on Facebook.
That's funny. We went over that last night. It was like, oh, you could actually search things, and you wouldn't have to tell somebody that their tire size fit.
You could see something on Facebook and be like, oh man, that was cool. And you'll actually hit the back button, and then you go do a search trying to find it, and you'll never find it again. It disappears in the abyss. It's terrible. Forums, it was like, you know, someone would sticky it, or it'd be on one thread, and it was super easy to find. I try to go back to the forums. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's just something about.
It's weird now. It's a weird landscape now, though.
Yeah. It's just, it's crickets. You show up there and it's like, there's nobody there. There's like 2 or 3 people there, and you know, I wish the forums stayed going, but man, the Facebook and the me stage of society now, it's taken over.
Yeah. It's
The public limelight of being on Facebook is just.
the crap thing is like when you're not on there, people think like you just disappeared.
Yeah.
Like you just don't exist. And I'm like, what? Yeah. But before we go into that, I kind of, what got you into porting in general, like to start messing with heads, you know, because something told you to go to LS9 heads, like something told you to do this porting, you know, where'd that come from?
That goes back probably from back when I was in like just doing hot rods with younger days. You know, I read all the hot rod stuff, and you always ported stuff. Always ported it, you know, ported heads. And I was always porting iron Buick heads or porting an intake manifold. So it was kind of like in how I did stuff. Like I never left anything alone. You know, I never just took something as it was and just ran it. I always have to tinker with it, you know. It's just the way I approach stuff. I never leave anything alone. So that was just, porting was just in my DNA kind of. So when I came into the LS world, it was just natural to be like, to be faster, you port it. You do something port. You port the head, you port the intake. You find some way to make it flow more air. So that's just been in my DNA kind of. And I can't remember how I got with the ported blower. I think I got hooked up with Adam at Ace Performance, or somehow we got hooked up with West Coast Cylinder Heads in California. But Richard ended up being an awesome dude, and he had a CNC program that worked out really well. And
he was fixing a lot of the LS7 heads at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was really big in.
Because I remember sending him a bunch of heads.
He was really big in fixing LS7 heads because around that same time was when LS7, you know, people were rocking everybody's world with LS7 roll racing. And that's kind of where the LS9 heads came from, because they came with titanium intakes, sodium-filled exhaust, and they were cheap. You could pick up a set of CNC'd LS9 heads for
$1,200.
Yeah,
yep.
It was
Summit.
They were dirt cheap. You know, I was like, man, this is like a no-brainer. And then it didn't take much. It was just like a little bulwark on the heads, and they flowed amazing. And I was like, man, this is where it's at. And you know, before I got mine to the track, I had worked on a couple customer SAR. I ended up selling out my ID 1300s. I sold the 85 conversion, my 4 fuel system. By the time I was getting ready to go to Cadillac Attack, I didn't have anything left. I had the wrong cam on the shelf. Everything was gone. So I ended up running race gas because I didn't have enough. I ended up stock pumps with race gas is what I ended up running because I didn't have anything else. That's it. That's all I had. And it worked out. I don't even think I had meth injection on it. And I took it to the track. And by the time I got the car sorted, you know, hooking and going down the track, I think I went a 920 something at 147, which was, you know, unheard of at the time.
That was the first or second Cadillac Attack event?
I didn't make it to like the first one. I got there at the trailer. Everybody was already at the hotel. It started raining on Saturday, and I just didn't make it. You know, Austin was driving the truck. I was in the trailer finishing wiring my ice tank and putting it together. You know, it wasn't even tuned.
Yeah.
You know, I had got it started and tuned. I was just going to fake it till I make it when I got there, and I didn't make it. So I went there, and we just chit-chatted in the hotel, and then I worked on coming back next year. But when I got back here, I think in February or something like that, that's when I ran like the 920 and stuff. And that was when, you know, that's when it was on.
I think there's a video from that, and that's where you had modified the lid, the factory lid.
Yeah, I pulled the stock lid.
And I've told you that before. Like, I'd made a post a while back. This is a few years back now.
The hot ticket was to put the ZL1 lid on. Everybody,
Well, everybody kept doing that. And then I just took the stock lid and did exactly what you did. And people were like, oh, well, you didn't come up with that. I'm like, no, I saw it on Rick's video. And in my mind, if Rick did it, there's a reason, right?
It just made sense to port it. You know, I was like, the brick was real close to the lid and had all that bracing in it. And I was like, well, that can't be good for the air flowing out of the brick. You know, I was like, cut all that stuff out.
Right. Well, and then once I had posted it, people were like, well, I dynoed it back to back and it didn't do anything, or my temps didn't change. And I'm like,
I had a ZL1 lid and machined it and everything for my car because I was just following the trend of that's what you did.
Right.
But at the time, I pretty much sold out. I worked on a couple customers' car and I needed parts and I couldn't get it. And next thing you know, I didn't have anything left. Nothing left. I decapped the stock injectors.
Jesus.
I had the stock pumps. I think I had a JMS voltage booster I put on the pumps. I had that, you know, you buy that 5-inch, you build it intake tube.
What is it?
I bought one of those. I bought an air filter that fit over it, and that was my intake. I took some sheet metal and I cut it around the intake to kind of shield the heat away from the intake. And I think the biggest money I spent was on the ARH headers. And then of course I did my little turn down deal on the exhaust. So
What got you into I guess because you had already ported everything else, when you go to port a blower, isn't that quite a lot different than doing a head?
it is, because you can't put on a flow bench. You just got to kind of look at it and view it as a flow plane, you know. So you just kind of look at it and be like, man, this thing, you know, you're trying about doubling the airflow of the engine with this thing. So you just look at it, it's like what makes sense, and, you know, of where to take material out. You know, when you get one that's CNC'd, you kind of see what they did, and you're like, well, if they took this out and it picks up, you know, 40 or 60 or whatever, how many horse, you'd be like, you know, I could take a little bit more out. You know what I mean? So you start opening up the inlet area more, and then you're like, well, you know, when I put on the flow bench, when I port match it, it flows better through the case, because I would bolt the case to the head and then put on the bench and flow it. And I was like, well, it picks up 30 CFM when I do a real good port match to it. So it's like, well, it's got to be worth more power. You know, because that was a big argument. A lot of people were like, port matching, you know, porting the port matching, it's a waste of the time, because the blower won't flow what the heads will flow or whatever. It's like the heads flow more when the blower will flow, so you're just wasting your time. And I was like, I don't know. The boost always drops, and it seems like I make more power. I think the washout for that conversation came with, because people were putting so much camshaft duration in it that it washed out. You know what I mean? If they're actually over camming it, and it kind of negated, you know, a good flowing intake path because it was too much cam.
Right.
For it. So what their argument was right for over camming it, but once you got the cam right, then the porting made a bigger jump. And because of the way I've always approached the cams, my cams were small. Like, I think that cam in that car was like, my first cam was a 219, 235 on like a 114 plus one. It was like stupid small, but I went 920s with it. It flew. So, and it wasn't right per se, but it was closer than what a lot of other people are running. So, and you know, once I started pouring the blower, I just didn't leave it alone. Because I was like, you know, once you find something, it's like, ooh, I made more power. You keep ripping it apart and reapproaching it and keep trying something different, trying something new. And I've ruined plenty of, I wouldn't say I ruined a lot of stuff, but there are some places I've ruined. I was like, yeah, that didn't work. That wasn't right. That did, you know, because you watch the log and you see where the airflow is and where the boost is, you know, and you're like, yeah, there's nothing that went the right way. Like nothing picked up. Like, I lost airflow boost. You know, if you pick up airflow and you lost a little boost, you're like, well, it's moving more air. So I was like, something's right. But there were some times I did it and I was like, yeah, that didn't do anything. Like, I did some work. I just got back from bragging rights, and I had done some work with the 2300 I have on it now, and it was really hot. So it's hard to tell that I went the right way with something, because I was like, it doesn't look like, you know, I made more boost and I made a little more power at World Cup than I did there. So it's like, I'm not sure I went the right way or not. So,
but you can't just go back and add it.
Yeah, once you go a certain way, you're just kind of like,
That's it.
a lot of times what I'll do is, because I got a bunch of spare cases, I'll be like, okay, let me keep this rotor pack, and I'll take the rotor pack out and go to a different case and try something. I'll go back one step, or I'll try it in a different, I'll try going this way instead of this way with it, with the porting, and try to see if I get my, the gains back, and you go back to the track and run it again. But once you start going really fast, the biggest thing is, because, I've always been a track guy. I've never been a dyno guy. That goes back to the G8 when I started. When we, back in 08, 09, it was everybody raced their dyno sheet. Oh, yeah. It was the dyno wars. It wasn't who was fast, and guys would show up with their 500 plus horsepower dyno sheet, and they're going 1230s at the track. I was like, I made 435 and I go 1160s. I was like, I don't know. And the problem was is that so many people were dynoing. There were so many guys that were fluffing the dyno sheets and they were running slow. I was like, well, I don't know who to believe. I'm trying to, I was real big on reading articles and all this stuff and all the tech stuff I could get in. And when you started going in this virtual world of forums and stuff, there were so many people that were spreading false garbage, oh, but this 235, 268 cam made 700 horse or 5 or whatever it made. And then you go to try it and it's like, dude, that car ran like 112 mile an hour. Dude, that was horrible. Like, I don't know what's wrong with it, but it should have at least mile an hour. It's a 6-speed, it should have at least done something. It did nothing.
Well, something I kind of noticed early on doing with the V2s specifically is I'd run them at the dyno. I think I've asked you about this before. I'm like, I'll get the air fuel dead on at the dyno. Let's just say 12.2 or 11.8, right? And I'm like, oh, 12.2 makes more power. And you go to the track and 11.8 goes way faster.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell is this? So I wonder if that's got a lot to do with it.
Yeah. I learned, I did the track stuff so much, and you always go through the evolution. It's like, man, I wonder if I could take all this stuff I've learned for the track, go to a dyno and get more out of it, and then go to the track and go faster. I became real good friends with Cal Hartline. And I asked him, I was like, hey, man, do you think I can come there and get on the dyno, see if I can squeeze out? There was a bunch of stuff, like there's injector tables and spark tables, and we thought maybe we could do some individual cylinder tuning. And I went down there. I think I got like another 60 or 75 horsepower out of my car. And I was like, man, I'm already running like bottom 9s. I was like, man, maybe I can squeeze into the 8s with this. I went to the track, and it was like all I did was go backwards. I ended up taking everything I did at the dyno and wiping it all out, and I end up hurting the motor. And I was like, oh man, every time, I did that a couple times where I thought I went the right way on a dyno, and I go to the track, and next thing you know, you lift a head or you torch a head or something. And I was like, how did I get this wrong? What is going on? And after a while, you realize it's like, okay, if I go to the dyno, I just go to the track and I add 7% to it, and I pull a degree out of it, and I start from there. And then I start reading plugs, and I'm like, why am I wasting all this time on a dyno? It just seemed like I was just wasting time and tearing stuff up. I was like, I should have just stuck to what I was doing, but I still learned.
But you had to do that to learn.
I had to do it to learn, because guys would go on the dyno and they go to the track and something bad would happen. I'd be like, we even did it last year with the Cadillac Attack. And you always feel bad because these guys are thrashing on the car, and right. Everybody's, some of us have been in the 8s for a while, but a lot of guys are saying, hey, I want to be like you. I want to go to the track. I want to be 8s with you guys. I want to be cool.
Well, and there's always that 9.0 barrier of entry for some reason getting into the 8s.
It is. There is. There's that. People hit 9.0s, whether it's the 2650 to the 1900. Yeah. They hit 9.0s, and there's everybody. You can ask everybody.
There's very few people that have ever went from a 10.0 to an 890. Right. Very few.
Right. And so we go to Cadillac Tech, and a lot of the guys I'm with will ask me, it's like, hey, can you talk to Cal? Can we do some dyno time? So we'll get up with Cal, we'll have a good time. We'll get on a dyno thrash. And you try to tell them, it's like, listen, we can take this to the track with this dyno tune, but understand all these combinations we're pushing them. When you start crossing that 9.0 threshold, a lot of things change, whether it's a 2650, 1900, you start lifting heads. You don't just push a gasket anymore. You're going to torch it. You know what I mean? You aren't going to just go to the track and be like, oh, we'll change a head gasket tonight. I was like, no, you're going to take that thing off, find a machine shop. You're going to have to weld it.
You're not nipping a plug.
Yeah, you don't nip plugs anymore. You just destroy everything. And Yeah, and we had a couple last year in the, that quest for 8s that, lifted ahead and torched it. And I'm like, oh man. And you feel bad because these guys, you know what they've been through because you've already done it. Yeah. You've already torn up 3 motors, 1 million transmissions. When I started doing the converter testing, I really didn't know much about, how like when you launch the car, the oil pressure dips because the pans cavitate. I was kind of savvy on it, but I wasn't watching it. And when I did the converters, because the RPM flash so fast and it hung, it sucked that pan dry. Like I didn't catch it. And I went testing a week before Cadillac Attack when I started doing the converters, and I nuked my first bottom end. I ripped the bearings out of it. And of course, I come in here and have time to fix it. I'm hand polishing the crank, throwing bearings in it, go to Cadillac Attack. It survived the dyno, but it made 2 passes and knocked the bearings out again. So I'm at the track with the pan down. I'm polishing the crank again because Cal's like, all you got to do is maybe make it 1 or 2 rounds. I was like, maybe. And so I spent all night putting bearings in the motor, and I knocked the bearings out, and I learned, but it sucked.
But you didn't learn what was actually happening until after?
Yeah, when I did the converter stuff, I'm so worried about looking at the RPM and the flash, and I wasn't paying attention to oil pressure because it's never been a problem,
Right. Well, you never left like you've been.
I never left. Well, when we were testing inverters, Circle D, working with Circle D like I'd done, they gave me a couple converters to test, and I put them in the car, and man, the one was flashing at like 5,800, 6,000, and it was just hanging. And I was looking at my logs, and the oil pressure was dropping down to like 7 pounds, and I was like, yeah, it didn't take, but by the 3rd pass on the way home, I got I came down to idle, and I got the oil light, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And I had nipped the bearing, and I was like, oh my gosh. So
it kind of goes a lot. When I do I do a lot of the remote tuning stuff, right? And when we do that, I tell people, I'm like, man, we got to do it on the street. Well, can we just do it on a dyno? The shop so-and-so just does it on the dyno. I'm like, dude, you can't do that. Because if you just do it on the dyno, it's going to be different on the street. I don't care if it's loaded or not, it's going to be different. And I think that's part of what makes you as fast as you are, is because you go to the track and you test it and you mess it up and you repeat and you test it again. And
yeah, I started at the track, and I've always been at the track, and that's been, man, I had so many good years with Fayetteville being, 12 minutes up the road. I'd knock out a car in my old shop, and I had the drag pack we used to call the slut because it was on every car.
I think everybody's had that.
And it was just, the GTO fronts and the drag rears, and they went on every car I had, and we'd swap tires here, we'd drag it to the track, and we'd make some passes, and I'd come back home, and the track was really good to me. They do like a bracket racing on a Friday night, and when 3rd round would come around 11, 12 o'clock, be like, hey man, you're about at 3rd round. You think I get a few passes in between, 3rd round and the finals or something? Because they had a gap, and they'd let me come in there and do some testing, even though they weren't open for test and tune. But I'd been there so much, I was like, might as well be part. I was like, oh yeah, hey Rick, how's it going? I had lane 7 was mine. I just pull up in lane 7, and they'd wave me through. And but I brought a lot of cars to the track, but I kept, we did rentals through the winter to keep, try to keep the track funded and keep it going. So, and it worked out great for me because there was stuff that I learned that I didn't know, that I didn't realize I knew. I was like,
or didn't even know could be a problem.
Right, because I always worked at the track. I was like, well, I just know that I drive them, and I go to the track, and this tune works. I didn't realize stuff like intake valve temp, and there's a lot of open loop tables that were feeding in that were screwing people up with the dyno that were like, listen, we dialed this guy in at 12.2 or 11.5. The guy's at the track, and it's like, dude, this thing's going like 12.8, 13.0. And the shop wasn't wrong, but they'd fire it up, they'd put it on a dyno, they'd make a quick rip,
and shut it down.
And they, because they're trying to show this guy some good power. And in the end, the shop wasn't knowingly doing something wrong, but it just ended up being wrong. And then some guy would come to me, and I'd go to the track, and they'd run it, and then I'd tune it and run it, and I'd look like I'm some magic man. I was like, no, I just undid what was wrong by the dyno. It wasn't the dyno's fault. It was just the process that went into it that was messing it up.
And that's a big thing that I try to get to people. I'm like, I like the dyno for doing an adjustment, getting it measured. But if you don't take it out and you go beat it down the street, and then I'll get people, they're like, oh, it won't hook on the street. I'm like, then why do you need that much power? If you don't go to the drag strip, and you want this much power, but you can't hook it. Why do you want that? It's like, right?
That's a big problem, because there's a lot of guys that, you know, once you start building fast cars, they're like, I want a 427 with, you know, they look at,
never gonna hook.
Right. They look at someone like, you know, a customer you got, and I want that build. And they're like, cool. And you put it in their car and you give it to them, and they have no idea what they got. Like, they're like, hey, why did you lift? I needed to lift. And I was like, yeah, that pass was totally gone. I built the car for a guy, super good dude. But, you know, it's a low 9-second car, and he was doing like the John Force burn file. He was just holding on the floor. He banged on the limiter. It had it happen 2 different ways, but one guy did it, blew the lid off the blower, just banging it off the limiter. Eventually, it leaned back, fired, floated a valve, whatever happened. It leaned back, fired, blew the lid off the car, messed up the hood. One guy, in fact, there's a set of heads of trick flows there, because it was making a lot of power. This is before, you know, losing the valves. People knew about it.
Losing the rockers?
No, the valves. On the trick flows, if you get...
I remember losing rockers a lot.
Rockers are bad, but the valves, they start tuliping.
Okay, I remember that.
So usually you end up having to put like a set of Manly upgraded valves in them. And they're good down to like maybe high 9s, but as soon as you get to the mid to low 9s, they just start collapsing the valve into the chamber. Well, this guy's beat it so hard that it dropped the valve and he lost the whole motor. You know, and he doesn't know what happened.
Yeah.
Rick had the car. He did a couple cool big burnouts, and he just tried to do the same thing, and he didn't make it past the 60 foot in the motors, you know, on the track. And he's like, I don't know what happened, man. And, you know, guys just don't know. They just don't, there's so much they don't understand. And it's such an expensive learning curve when you start tearing motors up, you know. Some of these people start with, you know, an NA car or like bolt-ons. Yeah. They do bolt-ons, they do some pulleys. And as you work with them, they learn, they pick up all the stuff you tell them, you know, watch your temperatures, don't let it cook, leave the hood up, you know, don't do this, do that, you know, check your tires. Did you check your plugs? Hey, didn't you notice it was skipping? You know, you know, oh, that's what that is. You know, because all these cars, half of them, they'll burn a set of MSD plug wires in 10 miles, and they just don't know. Oh, I just thought you needed to fix something on the tune. And I was like, no, that's called 7 cylinders, or in some cases 6. They burn 2 plugs.
We just had one popping. He's like, oh, it was popping when I was getting up on it, but so I just went ahead and did it. And I'm like, dude, did it ever pop before? No? Okay, so it's probably not supposed to do that.
The bad thing about being a tuner is that you're the last person that touched it, so you're responsible for everything that got done before it.
Always.
So
even if the radio stops working.
Right. You know, unless it's pouring out oil, they want you to check the tune, you know, for whatever. And it's like, did you even pop the hood? Well, I just thought you maybe could look at the tune. Oh, so I could look at the tune and tell you that the plug wires are burnt. I was like, you could have done that, but they don't even know. They're like, well, they look like they're connected. I was like, and that's where you get the disconnect. It's like, man, you need to be like more savvy. Unless you can afford like a pit crew or that guy or buddy that can always be with you that knows this stuff. Yeah. It's like, maybe this is a little more than what you should have.
Well, it seems to be like a barrier of entry thing, right? Like if you want to take a V2 and go 9s now, it's like, okay, no problem. You can do that all day, every day, forever, no issue.
Combination's been
but when you want to go 8s, you need to read plugs. You need to, you know, you need to check things. You need to go over your car before you're making that pass. Like they're not going to live forever like that. But you're also, because they're a heavy ass car. But when I tell people to read plugs, they look at me like, what's that mean?
Well, and there's also that comfortability, you know, being in the car. A lot of these guys, they go to get like an 8-second car, and you go to a race, and their nerves are so shot that you're like, hey, did you even look at the wideband? Did you notice it went lean? I have no idea. You know, did you feel it like flare or skip or whatever? You know, the thing could be total garbage, you know, bam, 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 all the way down the track. It's like, dude, at what point did you think you needed to stay in it going down the track? He goes, to be honest, I didn't realize anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's all a blur to them. You ask them, you're like, well, did you put it in drive or sport mode? I don't know.
Do you think that's just because this amount of power is getting so easily attainable now?
That, and it's just people just don't have the seat time and don't realize when you get to the track and you're putting in the lights and there's someone next to you and your buddy's recording. You know what I mean?
That's always. I always tell people, I'm like,
their
just
nerves
pass.
are shot.
Mess up the first pass, come back around, and then let's go ahead and run a number.
Their nerves are shot, and that's what was cool with we used to do the rentals here. That I was like, man, it's a lot more expensive to do the rental, but when you go there, it's so much more relaxed. You can have the window down. I can walk you through it, and if you mess it up, back it up. Do it again. Back it up, do it again. A lot of times you get to this track and the guy's sitting there telling you to do the burnout and you're like, oh, I got to get this burnout done. And you're screwing up the burnout and doing all kinds of stupid stuff. And by the time they get up to the line, they don't even know what's going on anymore, you know?
I think a lot of that's got to do with like the mentality of people now, right? Like the Facebook mentality, the instant gratification. People are like, oh, well, I should get this car and we should be able to, you should dial it in and it should go there and we should break a record. And I'm like, well, that's not how that works.
That's because everything it's like the Walmart of fast cars. You know, you can just go buy one. It's like everybody knows the combination now. Now, really, because really, I mean, there's very few shops that can't build a low 9-second V. You know what I mean? It's pretty much they can buy a ported blower from most shops and it's good enough to run low 9s. There's enough good cams, you know, most of the crappy cams are gone now, you know what I mean? So most of the time when you buy a positive displacement blower cam, it's good enough to get you in the low 9s. You know, the fuel systems, the injectors you need, you know, the intakes and stuff, a lot of that, the ice tanks, a lot of the stuff is already like common knowledge. There isn't a lot of secrets like before. So
what do you think, like I guess, a lot of the mistakes that people did make, like we talked about the ZL1 lid, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the mistakes that you do see people that were making and or still making?
A lot of the mistakes you see now are like, you know, these cars are 3rd and 4th generation now. You know, some guy's buying someone's, you know, has-been project in the garage that still has the underhood ice tank. You know, you see these underhood ice tanks that was such a like, and I know that I hate to bash them because people still try to sell and make money, but
calm down. I have an underhood ice tank. It's because I'm poor.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure there's some that they got. You know, some of them they've mounted them up front. They've revised them. They got 1-inch lines to them, but they're still the old school ones where they all they did was kill the flow and put more heat. You know, you're trying to take heat out of the blower, and all it did is just heat soak the water in the back of the tank. You know, it was good if you could pack it with ice. Close the hood and make a pass at a rental, but when you're actually at a race, all it did was it hurt the flow so bad through the blower that even though it had ice in it, it started down here, it climbed twice as fast, so you ended up at the same IAT at almost the end of the track. So it's like, what really did you gain? So a lot of the stuff that we see is for mistakes on the blower builds. A lot of people don't respect the fact that the air going in the blower is just as important as the air going through the blower. Mm-hmm. You know, they put an ice tank on it, but I was like, did you realize that the IAT going in the blower was 150, 160 degrees? I was like, you realize that it doesn't matter that it was 60 degrees out and you're trying to get your best time. You were putting middle of summer heat in the
Well, that's the ones that idle up with the hood shut.
Well, you know, they're sitting in the lines with the hood down. They got their ice tank running. They think they're good. Or just the hood's down. And then they got these, you know, an air raid or even a DDP. You know, they do great on the dyno because the hood's up. But then you put the hood down and all that thing gets is under the hood heat and it kills it. You know, a lot of guys are like, man, what can I do to get my 60 foot better? I was like, your 60 and 330s, you're killing it. You're killing, say, 30, 40 horse.
Because that stagnant air goes in first.
Right. And you tested it. I know you did some blower testing. I know you tried a few where you did the hood down. Mm-hmm. And you could see how much it killed it. You know, take the fan away. Take that fan away from that car, do a couple little rips on the dyno, and watch the power number crash. And it's just like, man, and you can look at logs, and they're not, even though they're going down the track, I had a guy that he was sending me logs. The hood was off the car. He says, oh, I run with the hood off the car. And I was like, oh, cool. So you would think that he doesn't have any problems. And I was like, but he was complaining that depending on the air temps, he had big AFR swings. And I looked at his logs, I was like, dude, you realize he didn't have an air box. It was just a filter in the corner. But you know, you're thinking it's like, well, the hood's off the car. He would make a pool. It was like 50, 60 degrees out. And his IATs, when the car's up to temps, were still 100, 120 degrees. I was like, with the hood off the car, I was like, you realize that the low pressure there, everything that's blocking the air is creating a low pressure. All the heat coming through the radiator,
pulling it up.
Well, you got the fender well liner in there too, and that fender well liner, you got your air box. It's a big negative air pressure, so it's pulling all the air that's going through the grill from the engine part and going right into the air box. There's, the fog light, and in most cases there's that barrier there.
Yeah.
There's nothing to let air in there, so it wasn't. The heat was just coming in and going up to it, and he went and put his air box in it. Fixed a lot of his problems.
Oh.
And it was just wild seeing it.
I remember seeing where you guys had like taped up. I think Dan was doing it, right? And he like taped up the airbox.
I made like a little YouTube video. I was like, listen, this is for all you guys out there that don't know or want to know. And I did a little video of getting Dynamat. I got a big box of it. I said, listen, Dynamat, duct tape, I don't care how you do it, but seal up your airbox. And that was where the argument of DDP versus a 5-inch. I was like, the 5-inch wins with the hood down because it's got the snorkel all the way at the bottom. A lot of guys will leave the fender well,
if everything was properly set up, the 5-inch would be better.
But the heat is what was killing. With the hood down, the heat was killing the DDPs in a lot of cases. Some people weren't taking out like that airbox.
That little flap.
Yep. If you didn't razor blade that flap out of the way, it was killing it. And another thing, we take the flap out, and a lot of times guys will leave the barrier. And my big thing was putting that panel so that below the frame rail, so the heat wouldn't come through the radiator and blow into the airbox. Well, it's a great idea, but when we were dynoing in like the engine dyno room, in the dyno cells, we could open up the door. And mind you, this thing, the dyno's got this huge duct feeding into it. You could open the door and it would pick up power. So we started learning that lower panel needed opened up because you were choking the blower by, you cut off all the heat, you got cold air, but now you're choking the blower because it's not getting enough air. So it was another thing. I was like, it was a learning curve. Like you fixed one problem, created another problem where you weren't getting enough CFM to the airbox. So now we got, and I'm looking for one, taking like my G8, you cut out the center of the light, leave the light bars on it, and just having it like a big.
I'm surprised more people didn't do that with these. I had a buddy that did it, where he just molded the light all out of carbon and had just an inlet.
Well, this one I took, because a lot of these lights now are getting all yellowed and messed up, but you can sand them and make them look better, but a lot of guys replace them and whatnot. Well, if you just cut, just the center of it, take the guts of the light out, but leave the turn signal, the yellow, and leave the little sidebar, then it lights up and everything, and it looks like the light fixture's there, but it's just got the triangle open in the middle, and now you've got like a big ram air right in front of the air filter.
Well, we did the whole tape the box up thing, but we did it at the half mile. And we picked up 4 pounds of boost.
Yeah.
That he didn't know what the lift thing was, and he's like, man, I saw it go lean, but I didn't want to let out. And he lifted the head. I've never seen somebody come back so happy lifting a head before. I'm like, dude. He's like, but we gained 4 pounds of boost, and I'm like, dude, that cost you a roll of duct tape.
I found a way, because there's a lot of stuff we do in tunes. We turn stuff off. We turn this off and that off. I found that with the this is one of those little fast secrets. This is a really cool go fast secret. I've told a couple shops this. Cat over temp. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing with going fast with these cars is that they like, you get a tune-up that makes the best power to the 8th mile, and between the 8th and a quarter, especially with 4-bolt heads, it wants to lift the head. Blowers love pushing gaskets. Yep. And it seems like you can watch the IETs and you can pull timing out and it'll keep the gaskets in it, but the car starts slowing down. It's like, man, I really wish I could get it to go faster with that timing in it. Well, what I found is that if you log cat temp and you enable the table and then you make your target AFR
in there,
and then you log it. So I have a lot of them that had a 0.5 point or 3/4 point AFR, and I'll have it coming in just after the 8th mile, and now I can stuff the timing in it and it'll take it all the way through the traps. So it was huge. I mean, it makes a difference between going 155 versus going 152 or 153. Or keeping the gasket or losing the gasket.
When Delgado was testing with Motec logger, have you seen any of that when he did the LS9 stuff? So they put a sensor right there because it's significantly faster than our intake temp, right?
Yeah.
And on tip in, as the boost came in, the temperature went up around like 400 degrees. So what I always thought, and this is why I run them richer, right, is because that sensor, when it says 200 or let's say 160, it's well over 160. Well, so you're burning so much, you have so much hot air that you think you're accounting for it with the fuel, but the temperature is so much higher than it actually is.
The cat temp stuff was it's just a calculate. The bad part is it's a calculated table. So when you start messing with, you start skew for the big injectors for the 1700s, the 2000s, all these monster injectors are running now. You end up messing with that cat over temp table because you're telling it's way leaner or way richer. You know what I mean? It's screwing with the calculations. So like my G8, because I'm on methanol, like my cat temps calculated will only go up to like 11 or 1200 degrees. So it kind of screws up with how I do it. But a lot of the Cadillacs, because it's got a bigger injector table, they'll start hitting around 1730, 1750, and you can throw a bunch of fuel in there, and then now they stay together. And someone like, Dan Hoare, his car, I've got his car so dialed in that it's like clockwork. It comes in, I was like, and man, he's been racing that motor now, which is funny. He had so many problems with that motor. He had it. It gave him hell. He had it fixed. He sold it. It broke for the guy he fixed it for and sold it to. He bought it back, and then he fixed it again. He said, "Screw it." I mean, I'm not gonna. I obviously can't sell it to nobody. So he lived with it, and that thing's been great now for at least 3 years. He ain't touched it. So I keep giving him a hard time. I was like, man, the crowd's catching up. Like you can't, you go on Cadillac Attack, getting the weight out of the car going 870s is like, I mean, we got guys going 870s in the heat now. I mean, The heat's on now, because there's a lot of cars. I mean, look at, we just came back from bragging rights and it was hot and miserable. I had 3 blower cars there running in the 8s in the heat. So.
Well, and I think that's a big issue is a lot of people, I think to feed into the common issues is a lot of people think that lean is mean. And
it's good for acceleration and it's good for low compression.
But it's not good for maintaining.
Yeah, I've learned for being rich and lean that that compression plays in that a lot. Like if you have like a 9-to-1 motor or something like that, or 8.5 or somewhere down there low, that lean can be pretty mean. And lean is like, it's real forgiving lean. But as soon as you start putting 10-to-1, 11-to-1, 12-to-1, that little tolerance window is like out the window.
Yeah, well, I remember I had called you on my car. Remember, I was like, man, why does my car want 11.4 instead of 11.8? This doesn't make sense. And you're like, what's your compression? I'm like, 11.5, 12.0. You're like, duh. Like, duh.
So I was at bragging rights, and man, Tim Singleton's been through hell with his car, just fighting one thing or another.
He was kicking ass, though.
He was kicking ass, and it's awesome. He deserves it. He's been thrashing in that car. He's had so much bad luck, whether it's transmission didn't go together right or something didn't cooperate or whatever. He had that thing. I think he had an injector problem, and it cost him a head gasket or a piston or whatever. So his was really rich. Like it was hot out, and he said, "Man, I'm like 10.8, 11.0." I was like, dude, you went 8.92. You just went a personal best. The plugs look decent. Don't touch it. Just don't touch it. Everything's happy. Don't touch it. I was like, every time you get a tune-up that's like working, it seems like the more you run it, the faster it gets. And I don't know what happens. Like, there's got to be something that happens in the. It's like there's some AI in the background. It's like it doesn't matter if the tune's closer, right? You can keep making rips on it, and it starts settling in. And I was like, it went faster. I mean, he went from like an 8.92 to like 8.75. I think was his best pass. And I mean, to him, that was like amazing because we were in the heat. It wasn't like
it was hot.
It wasn't
and
like
sticky.
It was amazing how well they prepped that track in the heat. I was impressed with how well they got that track. Because normally, when a track gets hot, it goes away. And when they prepped that track, it was glued. And that kind of got me because I kind of planned on trying to take advantage of the track being greasy. And I was like, all right, I got me a nice greasy track tune-up. And I was hoping to catch someone striking the tires. And we ended up racing late, and I didn't get so lucky.
Yeah.
So,
but I think that's a big thing. It's definitely in there because I've had on the Gen 5, it's way worse. Once we get a tune-up set and like, okay, the car just ran this number, and people are like, "We think we can get more." I'm like, "Let's leave it alone. Let's try it again." And you go back and you're like, "Okay, it went a little better." Well, you want to mess up? No, shut up. Drive it again.
Just
It's
let it cool
It's like
off,
once we've already gotten there, cool it off, do it again, because it will always pick up. And I don't know why, but it always picks up. I think it's just adapts over, that we just don't have access to.
When I first set the NA record in my G8 run at 10:59, when I got to the track that day, it was a cold rental day. We were always chasing those cold rentals, puts up some stupid record. And I want to say when I got there, the car started out running 1070s. And with G8s, for whatever reason, the transmission always makes its fastest pass if you hot lap it. I could always pick up. So I'd make a pass, come back, hot lap it, and it'd go a little faster, and it kept going a little faster. And every time I made a pass, and it's not getting colder out. I'm racing into the afternoon, it's getting warmer. And every pass, the car got faster. And I think I went from 1070 down all the way down to 1059 on motor, and I didn't touch it. I logged it, I watched it, didn't touch it.
G8s also have that stupid converter thing.
Yeah, if you got to always shift it into fourth on a burnout. If you don't shift it into fourth, it always hangs fourth gear. But on a second pass, it's always faster. I've never hot lapped a G8 and not been faster in a second pass ever.
That's crazy.
As long as it doesn't burn up or something. But the cool thing is now
she's calculating the wheel speed over here.
Yeah. So now I've been starting to put like 14 CTS-V TCMs in the G8s, because now I don't have to deal with that. So I don't have to tell people, I was like, oh, you're gonna have to hot lap it if you want that really good pass. So now I can get, I put a SS valve body, I put a 14 tech a minute. I think you got to turn off a few codes because it gets mad with the ABS or something, but ABS works, everything works. And it just makes it act simpler, because the biggest thing with the older stuff is you try to go fast, like go from slow to fast, and the trans is like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And then you have to explain it to somebody, and they're like, no, it's something in the tune. I'm like, no, just trust me, it's not.
It's just like spraying nitrous. You think I spray 300 to it? Or guys that want to add nitrous to it, I'm like, dude, with the G8, you're going to have to start with like a 150 shot, then put 175 in, then put a 200 in, then a 225. If you try to go from like 150 to 3, dude, all you're going to do is bang the limiter and blow the intake off it. You might get lucky. I'm not saying you won't get lucky, but more often than not, as many times as I've done it, it's always a shit show, because the guys will go into a grudge race and be like, yo, man, I need like a little bit more. Yeah, get that. I was like, dude, you could put 100 more on it, but it's probably not going to shift. What? It's probably not going to shift. And then you're just going to lose. Like, you can go with what you know and just put your A game on, or you can roll the dice and gamble and wonder if it's going to do something. And yeah, it sucks.
What other things that you can think of for like the V platform that either people are doing that they shouldn't be doing, or like the brick thing? So I'm very weird on the brick stuff. So I remember when I was too poor to reinforce a brick before it was a thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember bricks failing.
So the bricks failing thing, that's been like my pet peeve. Like, I don't reinforce my bricks. I get bricks that are reinforced, but I'm not, and I get people that like, they get mad at me. It's like, oh, you're just bashing me. I'm like, no, I'm not bashing you. You got to understand, this is like a bar and fin deal, or a plate and fin deal. There isn't much bonding these tubes to the
small bit of brazing.
And then when you put, like, a lot of guys are putting like, oh, I put this, they're proud of this beautiful heavy duty plate they're putting on. It's like, dude, they put too much heat in it, and it distorts it, or reloads it, or just gets too much heat in it in general, and more often than not, they fail. A lot of people are getting smarter. Like, you'll see that, they used to put that reinforcement plate all the way to the edge, and I was like, it doesn't collapse that far out. You know what I mean? That thing's not gonna like fold in on the edge. Right. I was like,
all you need is something to hold it.
So they've gotten a little smaller with the reinforcement plates, and they've brought them in. They've gotten a little thinner with it, so they don't have to put so much heat in it. So I think, a lot of them won't admit it, but they're like, damn, I fucked up his brick. Because there's a lot of people, the bricks aren't cheap. There are a lot of people that have lost new bricks, and they're like, damn.
The crazy thing is being real heavy in the V2s. I mean, I kind of started real heavy into it in like 2015, but from like 15 to 18, 19, I never really see bricks fail. I'd see them smashed, and like hers, that brick was so smashed in the back. I don't know how the water flowed through it, but it worked. So I left it, right? When we did another car,
blow them out. I just put my thumb over it and pop it out with some hair. It's like, and once it pops out, it like
never wants to go back.
Yeah, it's like domed. It's like, yeah, it's like a cheap reinforced version. And I mean, I don't have one in my G8 right now.
But 2020, 21, 22, you see bricks fail like crazy. They're like, oh, they're getting old. I'm like, no, everyone that's failed is a reinforced brick. There's some kind of correlation. I'm not saying that every reinforced brick is bad.
Yeah.
I'm saying that there's a correlation to this is what's been done. Yeah. It's clearly not 100% better.
They weren't failing before. They were just collapsing. You know what I mean?
And then we didn't even know that until we decided to pull the lid off for some reason. We're like, oh shit, what is this?
Right. So yeah, I always thought that maybe they should have done something simple, like put an X on it or something a little milder. You know, I agree with trying to keep it from collapsing because it helps, but you got to find a way to do it where it's not compromising the integrity of the brick itself.
Right.
And I think, I think as people are doing it more, they're getting a little more savvy because, I'm sure they're getting a call saying, hey, I got this brand new brick. It's 6 months old. It's leaking. Do you warranty it? No. You know what I mean? And then they're like,
well, unless you do like Dan and you put the wrong water in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was one of the theories. It's like,
Dan's going to watch this and be like,
oh yeah. Because like city water is like, man, I can put my well water in a car and it won't bother a thing, man. You go get some city water or something in it.
Oh, with all the chemicals.
All the chemicals and bleach or whatever they put in it, and that thing will eat the bottom out of anything. And you know what I mean? When you see how corroded stuff gets, you're like, oh, it must have been that city. You know what I mean? You start throwing theories at it. It's like, this is brand new. Why it shouldn't be failing? It's got to be the water you put in it. You know what I mean?
Well, that can't happen that fast, though.
But you know what I mean? You're just throwing ideas at it, and there's some people that's like, okay, maybe you are right. Maybe I did put some crappy water and just ate it. It wasn't happy. But then there's some people that put antifreeze in. I was like, dude, I had 50-50 in it, and I still lost it. I was like, ooh, okay, maybe that theory isn't so good after all. So yeah, but so the reinforced brick deal. If you have one, it's good. Just count yourself lucky. If not, I couldn't even tell you. I know some guys have gotten better about it, but because I don't use them, I just get them and I was like, well, it's not leaking, so don't mess with it.
I get a lot of things that people are like, oh, what do you think about this? I'm like, fuck, I don't do that. So I really don't know. I'm not going to give you a good answer, unfortunately.
Well, and the same thing on the brick thing, and as you see with blowers, they've gotten like overkill with the intercoolers. Like they've got the heat exchangers, like the intercoolers, like the whole size of the lid now. They're monstrous. It's like double pass, triple pass, and I forget the guy's name. I'm sorry, I feel bad, but terrible with names. The guy that did the monster.
Are you talking about
did the monster intercooler? Did the super? Got the big CNC inlet, but did the monster brick on it to like super cool the air.
Oh no, I was thinking of that one time that guy who did the little tubular thing.
Anyways, it just so happens that he was taking the same approach everyone else is. He was like, dude, I'm going to make the baddest, because the approach is like, I'm going to do the best job cooling the air. I'm going to make the most power. And really it comes down to like, you just need to get the chunk of heat out of it, because there is a point where you're just stuffing too big of it. It's like putting too much of an air filter on your intake. I was like, You're just choking it. It's costing you power because you got to push it through all that brick. Both ways.
I was going to say, how doesn't that at least affect how the air is coming out and where it's going and how much it has to process it?
Because, I've worked with Cal. We've done a couple tests on the engine and both dynos, and we've tested some of those big lids, with the big heat exchangers, and we've lost power.
Well, yeah, didn't Cal make like a custom lid at one point? It's still around, isn't it?
It's my lid. I got it. It was one of those like hand-me-down grandfather things. Someone had cut the top out of the lid and just made it like higher, but it was sheet metal. Yeah. But they had sanded it all down and repowder coated, made it look like a factory lid again, but it was like an inch taller. And that thing worked great. We put that thing on his car and picked up 10 horse. But it had a factory brick in it. It was still factory brick. And I run factory bricks in mine. And I was like, I run from the ice tank to the brick and back to the tank when I'm at the track. I don't have all the restriction from the heat exchanger up front. It doesn't take it doesn't kill my temps by running through the heat exchanger because the fans are on. And my ITs, I'm not I'm lucky if I go over 100 degrees at the traps. I'm like, what more do you? It's like, what more do you want?
I remember
like,
Dan showing me his, and he's like, I was like,
His
oh,
is hard.
my
He's
temps are this, and he's like, your temps are terrible. I'm like, no, dude, it was under 120. He goes, 120. I don't even go to 100. I'm like, what?
His is hard. Like his is one of those cars where I had to use the cat temp because his car wouldn't climb enough through a run to get the IT to pull the timing. So, he was starting at, say, 57 and only going to like 86 through the traps or something. I'm like, man, he's going like one cell. And some of those tables, you can't rescale it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah. So going back to the blower stuff, like now with these cars, like a lot of times, we used to do these bolt-on combinations, like the starter mods. It used to be like put heat exchangers on them and pumps and stuff. I was like, man, those FI interchiller plates, those thermal plates, dude, I love them. Like I could take an FI interchiller plate, leave the stock pump, stock heat exchanger, and I could pulley the guts out of it, and it'll still run cool. And then keep cold air to the intake, keep the engine heat away from the air box somehow. And man, the bolt-on game has really picked up with doing stuff like that, keeping the heat out of the blower, because that blower turns into a heat sink for the cylinder heads.
Right.
And
you can cool the blower separately now. Where before, if you tried to ice the blower down, it didn't really matter. As soon as you take the ice off, the heads run right to it.
It's a heat sink for the cylinder head, so it didn't matter how much you cooled it. And then the faster you pulleyed it, the worse your ITs got cruising around. And that's just because it's recirculating over the heat sink faster.
Yeah.
It's just recirculating over the hot spot faster, so it picks it up more. So as soon as you get the heat out of it, man, what it allowed us to do is great, because you were almost handcuffed to a heat exchanger because it got too hot. The blower would get too hot. Well, now with thermal plates, you can take a car that's like a weekend warrior and be like, listen, how much do you drive it? It's like, well, I drive back and forth to work, but I don't do like stop and go around town all day, because like I can take a non-heat exchanger car, drive it 30 minutes to work on a 90-degree day, drive it all the way home, and my ITs are like 130 degrees maybe.
But you couldn't race it.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't race it like that.
Right, but you could do it. And take it to the track on the weekend.
Right, you can take it to the track on the weekend, put ice in the ice
tank. You have to be careful, because you'll get people taking their heat exchangers off and be like, well, Rick said.
Yeah, Rick said.
I know.
Yeah. But I mean, it just, what it does is it opened the door for that next little spot you can go to, because, with that.
Weight?
And the weight. It's anything forward of the wheels is huge on these cars for getting, weight to transfer. It's an IRS setup, but it's one of the better IRS. I want to say the Cadillac is probably one of the best IRS GM setups, because they're one of the few cars where it took the trailing arm and put it in front of the cradle mount instead of behind it.
Is that why the wheels do this when you launch them?
A little bit, but I got an SS here, and the trailing arm goes behind. It's like at a 45. The Cadillac said, you know what, we're just going to put a little curve to the bar and get it up front, so it's more like at a 30 degree or 20 degree or something. So it's more like a trailing arm on like a conventional setup, so it doesn't act. You never see Cadillac squat, but like the SSs, the G8s, the PPV, they all squat, and they all struggle on the 60-foot. We have to roll the power in just right. That's where the shocks come in to be real important, where if you don't have the valving right, we do these 15-inch conversions on the G8s and these cars. If you don't get a real tight valving on the shock, they just collapse the back, and it just doesn't want to work. There's a lot of guys out there now with the G8 platform, the PPV and SS, that they'll buy like a Strange coilover. Strange make good shocks. It's not a IRS valve shock, and they can't revalve it. So once you buy it, you're kind of like handcuffed to it. People try to put a stiff spring in it, and what it'll do is it'll want to it'll just bounce, and there isn't enough dampening in the shock, and it just bounces down the road or the track. Like if it spins at the track, it'll want to surf at the track, and it's terrible.
Well, it seems like the factory mag ride is pretty exceptional.
It is. I mean, it is really good. That factory mag ride is pretty good.
Front coilovers and rear coilovers on Evan Clark's car. That's when we did upper E85 and injectors. We were running like 990, and that's when I was like, oh, porta blowers don't do shit. We're already going 9s. Ignorance, but But we did front and rear coilovers and the car slowed down. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? So we ended up taking the rears off and then boom, the car just 970. I'm like, what was that? And then I'm like, well, okay, so we have to have the fronts to get the fatness up off the ground, but clearly we can't put anything in the back. And then I kind of just never really went any further from there because it just worked.
Yeah.
So same thing in her car, same thing in my blue car. I just did coilovers in the front, leave the back alone. But I mean, is there coilovers that work better now, or do you really stick with some of the mag ride? Well, or where do you decide you have to go?
Usually the coilovers come in play because getting wheel fitment. You know, a lot of guys put the factory mag ride on there, and you know, running a 305 is a popular 17, and I don't know how many people have tore up their wheel well lips because, you know, they can't adjust it. You know, they want to be able to slam it down when they get the stock wheels. They want to turn it up so they can get away with their drag wheels, and the easiest way is to put coilovers on it. So coilovers in the rear, I would say it's more of a fitment and want thing. And it is weight. You know, you get rid of that spring, that big lower control arm, it does drop a little bit of weight off. It does give you some adjustability, but the rear end is pretty static. You know what I mean? When you watch the car slow motion,
yeah, they don't drop a lot.
It doesn't hammer the tire. It doesn't squat a lot. The factory, it doesn't need a lot. It does pretty good with the factory shock.
If you
I like using it, but
you just go with the coupe, you have plenty of fender fitment.
Oh, man, yeah.
Because that was made to be the race car.
Right. The fronts work good.
She flipped me off.
The fronts, the biggest thing with the fronts is it's a combination in the front because wheel fitment's the huge handicap. Like you go to something like a coilover and you're handicapped to the wheel because you can't lower it to use the coilover because it hits the stupid wheel lip. You know, all the wheels want to stick out. Everybody runs nothing against Forgestar, but they don't make the right offset to tuck them.
They were cheap, man. They were cheap.
Right. They're cheap. They work. So it's like, man, but you know what I mean? You're not going to, but people that want to go to coilover, it's like, man, you're spending all this money on coilovers.
Buy the right wheels to fit.
Buy the right wheels to fit. If you can't buy the right wheels, then don't buy the coilovers. Just rock the Forgestars and be happy with what they got and, you know, live with it and then plan for later.
But this all goes back to doing things the right way because, I mean, you know, you've seen so many people with these, let's do a stage 4 cam and, you know, do this and do that. And then they just miss the whole picture. And they're like, man, I spent $30,000, $40,000 and my car runs 10s.
Yeah.
So what are the mistakes that they're making, you know, other than obviously the thermal spacers? That's always been a thing. I remember having the phenolic plates made.
Yeah, the phenolic plates, but those are cheaper.
Crazy, because I remember making a video with Wendy where I had a thermal camera and she was holding the plate up and I put a torch to it and I think it was like 20 something seconds before you even seen the heat on the other side.
Yeah. Phenolic is awesome
because somebody was like, oh, well, that doesn't really do anything. And I'm like, watch this. But my biggest thing was you can keep the blower cooler, right? Or you could separately cool the blower instead of the heads pulling the heat through. Yeah, so that's why I've always tried to run those.
Well, and you don't heat soak it in the lanes as bad. You know what I mean? When you sit there and do the start and stop, like you could spend all the time in the world letting the car cool off, letting the car cool off for 3 hours. You start and stop it 5 or 6 times in the lanes, crawling up. I was like,
it just goes right back into the blower.
All that's out the window. So,
what about the lid spacer stuff? Because I've noticed you run a lot of those.
I do run a lot.
I don't understand the difference. Again, it was just like when you modified the lid. I was like, well, Rick runs it, and Rick usually doesn't run anything without testing. Yeah. So what is the gain? What is the advantage?
So they make a lot of the common ones are I think it's like a 10 and a 20 millimeter.
Why do I got to do it in a millimeter?
I don't know, because they're metric. I don't know why.
What's that in America?
They do an excellent Saturday Night Live skit about America and George Washington and about English and metric system. It's priceless. But aside from that, what it does is it allows you a lot of things you do in the car, a lot of things I do. It's called opportunity. So what it does is the spacer gives you opportunity to do something better. When you start moving a lot more air, you're trying to move more air. So what I do is when you put the brick on it, or you put the spacer on it, I pull the brick away. I'll put spacers on the brick and pull the brick down and take that orange insulator and I'll cut it down whatever I need to get it so it just seals, and I pull the brick away because we already poured the lid and it helped to get air around the brick, but now I'm got a 2650 on it, or I've got it was a 238 10.5 pulley on it. I've spinning this blower till to the moon, and you just a little bit more helps. So if if you put the spacer on it, it's not so much a heat thing as it is an airflow thing. So it allows you to get more distance between the rotors and the brick and the lid. So you're gonna
Kind
split the
of
difference.
fixing the turns.
Right, you're just giving it more area to move the air through the brick and get it out of the brick. You're giving it more distance between the lid and the top. And I'll do the same thing with the ZL1 lid. You don't see it as much anymore just because, oh my gosh, they've gotten expensive. Now, the CTS-V lid is the most expensive one.
Well, I remember when everybody was doing the ZL1 stuff, I was like, look, just sell me your junk ass LSA lid. Man, how many do we have? Like 30, 40 lids? I still have some in storage because everybody was getting rid of them.
I've got 3 or 4 of them. If something will happen, I'll bang the limiter, and for whatever reason, it'll pop the lid off it. Some of it's just, if you have meth injection and for some reason it cuts the fuel and meth is spraying and you bang the limiter hard enough,
It's popping it.
It'll pop the lid off.
No, that's those times where they were like, oh, Rick's spraying. Which, by the way, that is the biggest compliment ever. When people are like, oh, you sprayed the car. And I'm like, sure I did.
Sure.
I remember at LS Fest, somebody was like, oh, Rick sprayed the car and blew the lid off. And I'm like, do you know the lid's in pieces? Where's the nitrous at? Like,
Well,
all those nozzles. I'm like, bro, that's meth.
Yeah, a lot of them I had bars in it and stuff. And there's bars over there. I went and bought brass bars because a lot of times when I do meth injection, again, I've always preached it. Blowers love methanol. Boost loves methanol. Blowers love it even more. And you can't, a lot of people are like, oh, I just got 1 nozzle. It's like, why? Put 10 nozzles in that thing. As long as you got enough pull.
Calm down, because there's those guys in the Gen 5 stuff.
I will drown a car with methanol.
There's people running 1 pump with 3 15 nozzles and wondering why, man, I put 3, it's not doing any more than the 2. I'm like, because you have no pressure, stupid. Like, that doesn't work.
Julio's got that big output pump now.
But they don't have that, and they're still doing it.
I know.
I did a podcast with Julio, and we had to talk about that, because I'm like, guys, if you put a pressure gauge, you can see what the pressure goes to and make sure it's working. Yeah. But with the meth stuff, I mean, I was just like, man, if he's spraying nitrous, y'all are really in some fucking trouble.
Oh, yeah.
I remember people going after Dan. They're like, that's not a stock motor. I'm like, I don't know, dude. I've been at a shop and I saw the motor when he took the heads off. It was stock. As stock as it gets.
Yeah, I've always been, in fact, if we go into another shop, I have a shelf. There's got to be 20 nitrous bottles on it just because of all the nitrous I've taken off. Guys leave their bottles or their kits here, or kits that I used to, because I want to say way back in the day, I had some leftover nitrous stuff when I had my Buick, because I used to spray 500 to that, but that was easy. That was a Power Glide, and it was a Turbo 400 car. Yeah. Nitrous. So I have leftover bottles from that. But now over the years, I've got all these bottles in the garage. It's like, oh my gosh, one of these days I'm going to have to have a nitrous bottle sale. It's going to, the crave's going to come back, so I can feel it, and I'm going to sell bottles and make money.
And don't get me wrong, I love nitrous, but...
Dude, we're in the South. It doesn't matter how fast you make a car, they'd be like, yo, can we put our 100 shot on it just in case? In case, maybe, in case I need to have a little more. And it never stops, though. It goes from a 75 to 100 to 200 to 300. And God knows, if they can find a pill, they'll pill it and they won't even tell you.
Oh, dude, I've seen them where they drill them out. And I'm like, dude, the solenoid's not flowing that. They're like, yeah, but that jet's a 300. I'm like, the solenoid's a 125. Yeah. But I did it, so if we're out beating it, roll racing, I'm like, okay, well, now I'm starting to lose everything because it's so damn hot out here. So I'm like, there's my boost back, my little extra atmosphere. Yeah. But anyways, so try to focus back on the mod. So the biggest thing is really just isolating the heat, right?
Yeah, you're basically, everything you're doing to the blower is keeping the cool air to it, keeping the heat out of it, and making it flow more air. It's an air pump, really. So you're just trying to work on those 3 key things: heat, airflow, and cool intake.
And I think people underestimate how much exhaust really matters. That's that's a big thing.
Well, going back to, again, when I first put this cam, I had already sold the cam. I had, the cam I picked for the car, and I had this tiny 219, 235. Well, the car ran fast, but I had 2-inch headers, and I had turndowns on the car, and my heads flowed excellent. They're one of the best flown set exhausts I've had. There's some I have now that flow the same, but those were excellent. Most people didn't have heads that flowed that good. But that cam I used ran so good, it was like, man, maybe you don't need that much cam. But I had tried that cam in a couple of people's car, and I was like, it wasn't that happy. I was like, man, they're off more than what I thought they should be. But, you know, I had done the testing. I had done, you know, I was still new to the blower game. So at the time, I couldn't tell you why the cam wasn't good. I didn't know if it was the heads, the exhaust, the blower. You know, you couldn't really pinpoint it because I was too new. There was too many possible answers for the problem.
But I've noticed that your header game has changed through the years. It's like they've gotten shorter to now it's, I can't even stand next to that fucking car when you go up.
I'm telling you,
I'm like, oh, this isn't even enough.
Dude, the Zooies were the most amazing thing I've ever done. When I go in my grave, I want Zooies out of my casket because I thought that was the coolest thing I've ever done on my G8.
Is it just because it's cool, or just does it help a lot?
You know what? I had 3.5-inch exhaust on it. I had a Tri-Y 2-inch, 3.5 inch, and I want to say I was relatively close to where I'm at with the Zooies. The Zooies, what it is it was just opportunity. It was just something, you know, when you're going out to all these big races, you know, everybody tries to make something to make them like some type of icon.
Oh, you did that. The Zooies, for sure.
Yeah, with the Zooies, yeah. The first was a stupid rear end, the fucking retarded thing. But the Zooies that was like sounded like my trademark thing. That was something that was very unique. It was original. It had just amazing sound to it. It was just.
Some would disagree. I'm sure I lost a point of hearing.
I'm telling you, when you drive around the car cruising, and it's just amazing. I love it. I can't get enough of it. Like cruising in the car. Now I tell you, when you have the windows rolled down, you don't want to get on it because the Zooies come like if you watch it on a video, you can see the doors shake when you're launching. Like if you watch it real slow, you can see the panels shake on the doors. Mind you, that same percussion wave that's banging the panels in and out is right at the window level. And I'm telling you, it'll feel like it pulls the eardrum right out of your head.
This one here. I had already took my mufflers off on my car because I dynoed it and it made like, I think it was like 1180 something. And I was like, let me drop the mufflers off and see what it does. 60 wheel. I'm like, fine. Cause I like it quiet when I'm cruising around and I can just open the valves, and she hates it. She hates exhaust. Her car doesn't have exhaust. She wanted it off. Not only did she want it off, she didn't want it at the rear diff. She wanted it off in the middle. It was so loud that I guess the resonance of the exhaust kept shutting the dyno off. He's like, I've never had that happen before. I'm like, this is terrible.
Well, you know,
so we'll have Zooies now, thanks to you.
Yeah, well, that's good because I'm telling you, with exhaust, I'm very, you know, bougie with it because I've always built my own exhaust one way or another, whether it's modifying the header, building a different collector, or cutting flow masters up to get a sound I want, but Black Widows on it, something. I've always been very critiquey of how my car sounds. Like I didn't want just that zoomy sound. You know, I wanted a zoomy sound that was unique to just my car. And when I did the Y and the 4 3-inches, and it's got 8 mufflers on it, it gives it a really big sound. You know what I mean?
It's deep and it's crisp.
It's like a mini Pro Mod.
Yeah.
But it's you know, it's a little motor. You know what? Being 417 cubic inches, it sounds like it's 600 cubic inches because it has such a big sound because it's 4 3-inches and the way it turned out. And I couldn't have asked it for it to be any better. And like I said, that was the best. I'm telling you, Zooies rule. And you know, well, it's not fair. You know, you go to these tracks and everybody's got fender dumps on their turbos and they're shooting fireballs and they're being cool and stuff. And I was like,
shoot fireballs too.
Mine does. If you watch, when I go through the traps and I lift, it'll shoot a big fireball out. Or if I wrap the throttle, it'll throw flames out. You just got to catch it. Like even on the...
You need to tap that meth button a few times.
If you sit there and hold it and wrap it and lift, as soon as it pulls the timing out, it'll shoot a big fireball out.
We do it on the C7s. People are like, how are they shooting fire like that? I'm like, dude, it's meth. We just pull the timing.
Someone asked me, it's like, yo, can I get a tune that has like a lot of pop to it? I was like, ask and you shall receive.
I do that too. People are like, that's so gay. I'm like, it's their car and I love it.
Oh, I'm telling you, I tanked it so it would pull. I left D-cell fuel off, you know, so it had fuel on decel. I raised the minimum injector so it had a little extra fuel on decel. Jesus. And I'm telling you, and I turned and I let it pull down to like -3 degrees, and I'm telling you, it was like pop, 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 pop. Yeah. It was hideous, and they actually told me, it was like, okay, that was a little too much. I was like, hey,
we got to be careful on the C7 guys, because I guess because it's flat, so there's like a vacuum at the back of the car, and these guys will go down the interstate and just let off for like 2 exits. And I'm like, dude, you realize fire is coming out of that too.
150 and they let it decel for a mile, and it's just steady, just rolling flames out the back of it.
And they don't realize that vacuum is actually pulling the fire onto the bumper. Yeah. So I'm like, dude, I've had to tell people, I'm like, dude, I'm not liable. You better get an extinguisher, because this thing is going to roast your car. And then 2-3 weeks later, he's like, dude, my back bumper's melted. I'm like, don't know what to tell you. He goes, it's cool though. Like, I agree. But anyways, I think something that Brett had touched on was the exhaust port. That like a lot of people don't really focus on the exhaust port. I don't know if you've seen the Gen 5 stuff. It's pretty rough.
Oh yeah, I've messed with them, because, you know, even in a small world, there's a couple guys that are LS guys, and you're like, man, I know you're working on stuff. Can you just look at these and maybe tweak them a little bit?